Okay, it is 8:30 p.m. and welcome to uh, Introduction to Criminal Law. And this is our week one open house, and I'm going to take time to go over the requirements and expectations I have for you in this course. And then I'm going to close out with some details about myself. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the course homepage. And here we go. Okay, the first thing you see is my picture there. Looks like I'm happy there. It's because I took this at campus. I wasn't at a jail or a prison or anything like that. So next to that, you see my name. You see my cell phone number, 630-660-8480. You can use that number. And I have a note under here that's very important for you to take note of. It says students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. So that means what it says. Now, if you happen to text me, make sure that you include your name and what course that you're in so that I'll know who you are. Because when you text me, if you're not in my phone book, which I don't keep students in my phone book because there's so many of you, first of all, and secondly, I don't want to use up all the data and information in my phone, then I'll be able to know who you are and be able to give you some help. You can email me in the course mail, or you can email me with your regular student email to richard.wright@rasmussen.edu. That's indicated in the welcome, so you'll be able to see that information there. Okay, and so make sure that when you're joining in that you activate your audio in order to hear this session. Um, go to the chat box, um, activate audio to hear lecture. Okay. So anyway, you want to make sure that you do reach out to me, and I'll be able to answer your questions, help you. If you have an urgent situation, probably the best thing rather than to email me is to text me or call me. Usually when I get a text, if I see it right away, I will read it, and then I'll usually call back. Because sometimes emails and when you text someone doesn't necessarily get all of the details through, and it's better to do it with a phone call itself. So feel free to do that. A lot of professors are not like me. I have students that are surprised when I call them, but that's how I am. I'm very proactive when it comes to students. All right. So any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day, you figure that out. Then I want to stress to you how important APA is. I am really dogmatic about it. Well, it's a college requirement, but it's also very important for being able to establish integrity in your writing, to provide in the body of the paper citations and the resources as references at the end of the paper. But it also requires a cover sheet and also 12-point Roman to be able to do so. and we provide resources to help you with APA as well. Over on the left side here, if you were to click on this, you'd see that there's a tab that leads you to information about APA as well as the writing process. If you click on that, you can see at the top where there's a JPEG. But anyway, the point of the matter is that you can find out the information that you need regarding APA. Very important. Also on this page side here, I give you a link to APA as well. Here it is to the writing guide, and then also I give some articles down here to help you with APA, dealing with referencing for criminal justice students and so forth. So you want to make sure that you utilize these resources. And then I also say it's important that you apply critical thinking. You each have a Grammarly account, which is found under the Resources tab. If you look at the Resources tab right here, and you would click on that, it would lead you to the resources that are available to you, including library and learning resources as well. Okay, so you want to utilize those things. Then, additional course information, again, reminding you that you are to conduct research for all written assignments. And that means that if you use a textbook only, you will lose 2 points. Textbook should always be a starting point. And then we have great resources in the library guide. Here's a link down here to the Library and Learning Center resource that helps you out with that as well. All written papers are in the APA, and then it talks about cover sheets. Then there's some information about tutors. If you need a tutor, which sometimes students think that they only need a tutor when they're not doing well, but tutoring is also to help students who are doing well to keep them heading in the right direction. So you can take a look at that, and it explains how tutoring works. These are actual students, most of them, who are taking classes like you or have had classes, and they know how to help you with assignments. They know how to give you APA help, Grammarly issues, dealing with critical thinking, and all of those things. And then these are some articles that you can copy and save to help you with your writing. Critical thinking video, if you copy and paste this, then to your browser, you can see a fantastic video to help you understand how critical thinking operates. Now we have the rubrics, but the rubrics are located in each written assignment, and then here's the discussion post rubric right here. So I'll show you how that works when we get into the module. Live lectures, there will be 6. One is tonight, and that will be the last Thursday that we do, starting next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m., same time, Central. Weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 lectures will take place. You're required to attend the live lectures and or provide the keyword at the end. I usually get, sometimes I'll talk about in the middle, but then I won't let you know it's the keyword until at the end. So you don't want to speed ahead, because sometimes it's not at the very end. But you want to make sure that you listen to the entire lecture, not just to get a keyword. Your idea for the lecture is to get things that will help you in your written assignments. And then every lecture under recordings will give, for example, today it'll say week 1 open house. I don't know why I'm getting all of these calls today, and normally I don't get a lot of calls during this time, so I turned the phone off now. And so anyway, with live lectures, um, the recordings will be under this section. Okay. So now let's take a look at the welcome announcement. For some reason, it's not coming out strongly. Okay, there we go. So here's your welcome announcement, which tells you about the course, and it tells you a little bit about me. And these things that are highlighted are very important, particularly the announcements. Check them all the time, and you should be logging in all the time. Your introduction should be in the student lounge, as you saw mine. And then check your course mail for personal communications. And then important that you do that on a regular basis throughout the course, because that's how I post documents and things to you as well. The syllabus, we're going to go over the syllabus, but it sets out the policies and procedures. It's basically a contract between you and the college. Your calendar is your friend for important dates, when due dates are there, but the content is involved as well. Under the tab starting, Get Started, there's a section for general course questions, which anybody can answer, and it gives you an opportunity to receive help from another student as well as me. Then your resources tab, which I already shared with you. Then your report tab about your grade book. Then again, APA information, tutoring, and so forth, okay? And then this again gives you the schedule of the lectures, okay? So now let's look at, as soon as it comes back, here we go, week 1. So for each week, you'll see, it'll say week 2 announcement, week 2. It'll say module whatever, and this week is 1, crime and the Constitution. We're not going to go all the details because today is a survey of what's expected to you in this course. Read chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook, A Brief Introduction to Criminal Law, and then look at the activities that are under the lesson tab: types of law, what is crime, the Fourth Amendment, probable cause, and then key terms for practice, elements of an offense, classification of crime, and a practice quiz. Because there will be quizzes in some of the weeks of this course. This week there is not. There's the practice quizzes. Practice quizzes are good because it helps you to understand what's happening here in this course. And then the discussion, police dogs and warrantless searches, initial post. In this week only, your initial post is due Saturday the 11th, and your reply post is due Saturday the 11th. You're going to discover, starting with week 2, as you'll see by the calendar in a minute, that initial posts are due on Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then your written assignment is the elements of criminal law, and then it's due Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then you'll see that the rubric as well as the module has information. And then information about the open house, which is taking place right now. And then my motto, encourage you to start strong and finish strong. Adversity is a springboard to success. I will close out by sharing with you what I mean by that. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to that. So in the meantime, let's look at the course calendar. Okay, here it is. And it gives your reading assignment. Now you need to be aware that it's not just this, but it also, if you click on it, it opens up another section that gives you more details. Same information is in the classroom, and the same information is on the announcements. Then your live lecture, which tells you the time and tells you about how long it's going to last. Okay. This one may be a little longer because of the experience I'm going to share with you. Then your initial post. Again, you click on it and it tells you the topic. And then it says your reply post is also due the 11th. And then your written assignment. See the rubric. You'll hear me talk about the rubric constantly. When you get your grades and you look at your grade book, unless there's a Grammarly hit, you'll see under each section of the rubric some remarks if there are things that you did wrong. Okay? And so tells you when your written assignment is due, which you'll see in just a minute. And then the same thing, starting next week, you'll see your initial posts are due Tuesdays, every Tuesday. So don't get confused just because the first one is Saturday. But how do you know why we did that? Of course, because you didn't start class until Wednesday. And they didn't want initial posts to be due the first day. They wanted you to have some time to go through and understand, okay? So then starting next week, our lectures will be Tuesdays as well as your initial posts are due from there. All right? So now let's go look at the syllabus. Syllabus gives my name, phone number, an email address, and then also information that I provide on the home page as well. I like to provide information in more than one place. So let's go down. Okay. Information here, you know that all written assignments are due Sunday night, except on the last week of the class, week 6. But you'll see that if you look at the calendar. Discussions, you'll notice this. Week 1, initial post is due Saturday. Week 2, week 1, reply posts are due. But then weeks 2 through 5, the initial posts are due Tuesday and Saturday. But then when we get to week 6, it's the last day of class, which is actually September 14th to be exact for this course. So now let's look at what you're going to be doing here. Total of 500 points. The optimal thing is to do your discussion posts. You get 90 points for discussion posts, and then 200 points for your written assignment. As you can see, it's heavily weighed on written assignments. It's almost half. Quizzes, so you want to do written assignments, quizzes, and discussion posts. Then that just leaves you with the 5 points each week for the live lectures, for a total of 6%, which adds up to 100%. Now, on the grading scale, I will give you a warning right now. Never call me, email, text me, or ask me, what does it take to pass my course or get a C or D? Don't ask me because I'm not going to answer you. I don't answer that. You can do that all by yourself without an answer from me. My goal is to focus on getting you to A and as low as possible a B minus. So the basic 80% and up. So if you lose more than 20 points or 20%, then you drop to a C plus. The point of the matter is this. This is where I work. I like to work up here, but I'll work with this as well. So the point of the matter is that I want you to be an excellent student. I strive for excellence. You'll hear me talking about my story at the end. And so I am known, I have a reputation for that, and I'm not going to change it because in our area of criminal justice, we need more A and B students than we need C students. Now, that doesn't mean that C students can't get jobs. What that means is that only the best in the niche forming or finding a job, they start to look at, because you develop, if you get these, that means you have some good habits. It means you're doing something right. You keep that and make that a way of life, and you'll be successful in all your endeavors. That doesn't mean you won't run into problems, but you'll still have a capacity to be able to have. I have students that say, well, I'm accustomed to getting an A, an honor roll, and then I find out that they're not doing APA. And they say, well, no other professor looked at them. I'm looking at them because, number one, I know what it's about, but the school also requires it. They also include it in our grading requirements. I have it in the rubric and explain to you in detail and spend a lot of time talking about it. So it's important that you do that. The same with Grammarly. I run your papers through Grammarly. You have a free Grammarly account. Check the plagiarism box so you can see the percentage. The key is that I want to see more of your critical thinking, your analyzing and understanding relating to the assignments, not just the information that you are able to do research. Okay, being a good researcher is good, but then you take that research information and you apply and put your spin on it, your analysis, applying it, critiquing it, evaluating it. That's what critical thinking is. And you, like I said, we have a video for that. So then we have our transferable skills, which we stress in all of our classes because we know and recognize that employers are looking for students who, when they leave school, are proficient in the following areas. Communication, both written and oral communication. Very, very, very important. You will be stressing all of those or exercising these in one form or another throughout projects, assignments in this college. And in this course, your written communication is very critical. Critical thinking, I already talked about that, so that's one of the transferable skills. Digital fluency. Everything is digital now. We have textbooks now. And when I started out as a student, we didn't have that. But I've learned how to adapt this phone. Everybody's got a smartphone pretty much, or either access to a computer, laptop, or either find themselves with an iPad or Android pad. The bottom line is that materials and books. I used to have to carry books, the paper kind, and now you can put them on your digital system. I have an app on here that has my books on them. There's only one book that I teach a class with that doesn't have it, but it's in digital. It's in digital, and I'm able to download it and see it in digital form. Diversity and teamwork. First of all, you'll run across students from various backgrounds, cultures, beliefs. Respect them. You're going to learn to do that also as a criminal justice professional because you're going to be exposed to people from all walks of life. And just because you don't agree with them, even where it is politically, you don't necessarily criticize them, but you can respect their point of view. And so the point of the matter is diversity. People in this country should be able to operate on the basis of what the country is made up of. People from diverse parts of the world. Teammates, working together as a team and teamwork. And you're going to discover that by doing your posts, responding to each other's posts, presenting ideas and things of that nature. We don't have any team projects in this course, but there are some classes that do. And most of those are residential. But the point of the matter is that you get accustomed to teamwork because of the fact that when you start to work as a professional, you're going to be working with other individuals in teams from other aspects, such as if you are a police officer, you're going to work with detectives. You're going to work with forensic people. You're going to work with medical examiners and so forth. And they're all going to make up a team of dealing with a case. Ethics and professional responsibility. I used to teach a course in ethics and criminal justice. It is so important to operate on an ethical fashion. Develop that habit in school. We have the academic integrity policy, which kind of helps you to learn that. But ethics actually start at home. Individuals should recognize and appreciate that good ethical practices will elevate you. Poor ethical practices will pull you down and will lead you to a disastrous form of life. Oftentimes, I've seen law enforcement people with poor ethics end up behind bars at the place where they're trying to put people away. And so you don't want that to happen. You can lose your job. You can be disciplined. Professional responsibility. Follow the code and conduct of the professional area that you're working in, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a correction officer, probation officer, parole officers, medical. Whatever you're doing, it's important to satisfy the professional responsibility of the field that you're operating in. And then finally, information literacy. Information's all over the place, but you need to be able to find good information, not utilizing information that's not credible. Like never ever, and you see this in the rubric, using Wikipedia. I've had one student so far this quarter to use Wikipedia, and when they use Wikipedia, they end up losing points in their papers because Wikipedia is not a credible resource. And so you'll have an opportunity to utilize these skills. The last thing I'm going to go over on the syllabus in detail is the late assignment policy. You should know that after an assignment is 1 day late, you lose 10%. And for each succeeding day, you lose 10%. It says all the way up to 7 days. But however, you should know this. Let's say, for example, if your grade is 100 and you lose 10% on that Monday, then it's a 90. Then a Tuesday, it's 80. Then Wednesday, it's a 70. That's only 3 days. And then the fourth day, it's a 60. Well, you don't even have to get to 7 days before you have a failing grade. So the point of the matter is, now it says in here, in some cases, students may be asked to complete alternate assignments. I don't do that. I don't have the ability or capacity to do that. And it says, notice it says, it may be asked. But no, I don't have time to do that because I have so many students. And it's pretty difficult to come up with that kind of a concept. So anyway, the key thing is get the assignments done on time. Discussion posts are due that week. If they are submitted after Saturday, if they're submitted Sunday, you're not going to get any credit for the discussion post that is submitted. So it's very, very, very important that you understand the policy on discussion posts and written assignments. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about late submissions is that I, as an instructor, have the ability to waive a time frame or penalty in extenuating circumstances. I can do that. However, I don't do that unless a student lets me know, because I'm not going to assume. I'm not going to do that. And you're going to have to be in touch with me. So what's the best policy for you to do is to send me a message right away. A lot of times students will email. Well, if I was in an extenuating situation and I had the ability to be able to call or text my instructor, trust me, I would be doing that right away to let them know. Because what happens when I get a text that tells me of a situation that's really bad, I will then reach out to that student and sometimes call them right then and there as soon as I get the message, if I'm right there when they send it. If not, I'll try to reach them as soon as possible. The point of the matter is make me aware. Don't wait a week later and say, you know, I really didn't want to bother you. Then I'm not going to do that. And please, please, you know, I've had people to say someone passed away. I had to attend a funeral. Would you like a copy of the obituary? I don't want that. I don't want your documentation. I don't need your letters or notes. You're in college, okay? I believe you. Remember, it goes back to ethics. I believe that you're operating in an integrity, form of integrity, and give you that ability and desire. I always tell people it never fails that if you are going to try to play games, it's going to catch up with you anyway. And who are you really hurting? Yourself. And so we're not going to go there, okay? So anyway, that's it on the late submission, the academic integrity policy. You can take time to read that yourself. I do recommend reading it, but don't worry about it because it shouldn't be something that you're concerned about. That means that you're not doing anything that falls in any of those categories. So with that, let's look at the actual module for this week. Let's start out by going over the assignments in more detail. As I said to you before, you have your discussion posts. But what I want to spend time is talking to you about the written assignment. Now, notice this one. It says you will be provided 3 short scenarios that are based on actual events. The police officers responded to these scenarios had to determine which criminal laws had been violated, and if the elements of each offense. Read each scenario both and then answer the questions that follow. Okay? Make sure that you go and take a look at the rubric, which pops up as soon as you access the assignment. 2 things, the due date, which is this Saturday, and then the possible points, and then click on View Rubric. You will see for each scenario to get the 10 points, you want to go ahead and, or 75% of your grade. So if you do this one, you're going to lose 1/4 of your grade. That's great. That's bad. If you don't do this one, these 2, if you do just 1, I've had students who do just 1, but they didn't pay attention. They thought to pick 1. No, you do all elements of it, and you can see the percentages next to it. You want to get 100%. And then at the end, then you want to get the 10 points by making sure that it meets the 3-page minimum length requirement. That it, not each one, but the sum total is 3 pages. Okay? And then dealing with APA, and I already explained that. Then it also talks about not using resources such as Wikipedia. And so you want to rely heavily upon your rubric. when you get your grades, you'll see under each section that I'll have a section for comments. And you got to make sure you look at that in your grade book, unless you hit a Grammarly hit. If you hit a Grammarly hit, I'm not even going to go this far. But and that's if your percentage, you run through Grammarly and plagiarism falls above 25%, you're going to get a loss of 26% of whatever the grade is. Okay? So that's that. And then you submit your assignment there. Okay? So those are the assignments. So now let's go back and get to, okay, so then it tells you your live lecture, and it tells you your discussion. All right, so now let's go to the section on lesson content. And it tells you always the objectives, which we'll talk about not in detail, but, you know, defining a crime, dealing with probable cause, the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure to a crime. And so you're reading, it reminds you again, tells you types of law, what is crime, the Fourth Amendment, key terms, and this. This is all stuff to help you. Then these are the written assignments, these two right here. Okay, so let's go down and let's take a look at these sections. And so you look at and, you know, deals with the law, what it's all about, what a world would be like without laws. I'm not going to go into it, but I would if we were having a regular session. So you're going to go over those, and then you're going to hit next, and it tells you more, next, and next, and it goes all the way through. It tells case law, it explains things, and so all the way till you get here. And then you go back, and then this is the beginning. So don't ignore this, because it explains some things that are valuable to you in understanding the module. What is crime? It defines crime classification, misdemeanor, or felony. Now, you should be aware of this, and I'll tell you this once. The difference between a misdemeanor and felony, other than these definitions that are in here, is that you'll discover that misdemeanors are not as serious offenses. And the sentence that a person can receive for a misdemeanor is up to 365 days in jail and or a fine of usually $1,000, somewhere around that range. And that's a misdemeanor. And that's for like petty theft, disorderly conduct, battery, not aggravated battery, but battery. Felonies, on the other hand, are anything that 365 in a day up. And it tells you in here. It says more than 1 year in prison and more serious, such as homicide, robbery, arson, some theft. Notice it said petty theft. It depends on the value of the item. An infraction associated with a non-criminal offense, such as typically carrying no risk or time in jail, like a traffic citation or something along those lines. Okay? Jail versus prison. Again, I teach a course in Introduction to Corrections. Jails are, as it says, it's a temporary place, usually where people are receiving misdemeanors or either are awaiting trial, one or the other. Prison is when you've been convicted and you are sentenced to time, and the time falls outside a misdemeanor or a felony, then you generally go to prison for that. And states have departments of correction, and the federal government has the Bureau of Prisons as well. Okay. Fourth Amendment, we start talking about search and seizure. You're going to discover the elements necessary for that in the Fourth Amendment. And then there's some exceptions, such as plain view. The term means what it says. If something is able to be seen by the officer very easily or detected, some kind of noise or something, or smell, So, for example, if the officer is at the front door and they smell the odor of burnt marijuana, that is, their plain smell could also be used to support probable cause. This is something that you need to look at, because if you do your discussion post, you will see that that applies in terms of the plain view exception. Some of you didn't get that because you didn't see this. You skipped over this before you did your assignment, but you got to make sure that you see that, okay? Then consent searches, automobile, search engine to arrest, and then it gives references to cases that you can read. Key terms. Now, here's where we get into this. You want to click on this. This is an activity that will open up a new window. There it is coming up in the corner. Okay, there are different ways. Flashcards is the ideal way to use. And then you'll have to run Adobe Flash, just allow. Here it goes. And it gives you a common exception to the search warrant requirement that permits law enforcement officers incident to a lawful arrest to search the person and their immediate belongings, such as wallet, purse, or backpack. What do you call that? I can tell you. Do you know what that's called, Amy? You can type into your chat box. Do you know? Okay. Here it is. Search incident to a lawful arrest. The answer was actually given in the question. Let me show you. Okay, let's start back. Okay, they changed that. That's all right. But anyway, the answer is search incident to an arrest. A law that has been published in a statute book after it has gone through the proper process, legislative process and bill-making process. Here it is. A codified, it becomes a part of the code. And so you begin to see how these are good, and I'm not going to stay with them, okay? But every week you'll see that, okay? So now we go back to the course content, and let's go back down here. And then elements of an offense. This is also another thing. There's so many things in here to help you, but you have to take the time to help you. This will help you in your studying. For practice, elements of an offense. Practice identifying the legal elements of an offense. Start activity, so you click here. Click the element that is not an element of armed robbery. That is not an element of armed robbery. Which one do you think is not? Intentionally. Okay, let's see. Not quite. Armed robbery is the intentional taking of property from another person with force or threat. Armed robbery doesn't typically involve entering the dwelling of another. So, so you have to know the elements. Yeah, I understand, but you have to understand armed robbery doesn't have to require what it says is not an element. In other words, one of these things in here is not necessary to reach armed robbery. Entering a dwelling is not necessary. It can happen outside or any place, but it has to be intentionally taken properly with force. And then you can continue. And then identify the elements of a simple battery by selecting the correct answer from each element pair. Element 1, battery. Which one is battery? Intentionally or accidentally? Yep. Okay. And then 2, threatens bodily harm or causes bodily harm. Which one? Nope. Because threatens doesn't necessarily mean battery. We're not talking about assault. If you're talking about assault, then you get that. But actually, intentionally causing bodily harm, you can get tricked pretty easily. To property or to another. Yeah, because you can't commit property. You can't commit battery on property. That's not called battery. Okay, it has to be a human or animal or something. With consent or without consent. There we go. Without consent, and you submit it, and I guarantee you this is it. Nice work. Yeah, okay, because if you'd have picked the other one, it wouldn't have come out right. It wouldn't have come out right. So it is intentionally bodily harm to another without consent. So you see how these things are real cool. So you take time and go through them, and they will help you a whole lot. All right. Let's see. Okay. Same thing with classification of a crime. Okay. You can start the activity for classification of a crime. Match the type of crime with the proper crime. Damage to property with a 30-day jail sentence. Very good. Burglary with a sentence of 18 months in prison. There you go, because of what I shared with you. And then, of course, infraction is seatbelt. Aren't these cool? Don't you like these? Don't you think that they will help you in your studies? Yeah, I think so too. I think they did an excellent job with it. So, yeah. So I wanted to bring this to you because students sometimes don't pay attention to that. And I said, man, you got some resources in here that are awesome. They're like cool. Another way to study it. You're studying when you're doing this. You're not just playing a game. Okay. Um, and then practice quiz. Now, these are invaluable. This is a non-graded quiz. You are going to have this. It says this activity will help you prepare for your graded quiz, so do not skip it. So let me just show you here. You don't have a quiz this week, so you got to practice quiz. What are codified misdemeanors and felonies known as? There we go. Yay! All right. Let's do a couple more. The Fourth Amendment is an example of which type of law? Nope. What is the Fourth Amendment a part of? Okay. All right. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Burglary is an example of a or an subject that subjects the offender to a potential prison term for 1 year or more. You're smart. All right. You're operating with your first letter of your name so far. So let's see at the end of 5.5 weeks. That's where you end up with the first letter of your name. Remember, just do it. Just do it. What level of proof is necessary in order for police to make an arrest? What level of proof is necessary? This can trick you for a policeman to make arrests. That's it. Probable cause is the level of proof necessary to make an arrest. Okay. So anyway, I'm backing out of this. And then that's it. That's it for that. So every week you're going to have those things that will help you, especially the quizzes. But all of them, take the time, allocate the time, sit down. I mean, you've read the material, and I'm gonna tell you something. To be honest with you, I would even do it before I do my writing of my assignment, because there's information that you're going to discover in here that will help you. It's studying. Don't feel bad. It's studying. It's part of studying, and it's a fun way to study, I think. I wish I had some of this kind of stuff. Man, I wish I had it, but I didn't. So anyway, that's that. Do you have any questions about your expectations for the next 5.5 weeks? Okay, that's a fair statement. Not right now. If you do, you know what to do. Okay, but I think that this session was important for students to understand. Let me tell you something. I guarantee you that most students don't pay attention to this type of stuff. They look straight at the written assignments, straight at the assignments. But I said, no, look at the content, but especially pay attention to these little quizzes and things that are down here. These things right here, all the way down to the practice quiz, are invaluable. Would you agree that they're invaluable? Would you? Yeah. And so it's not a waste of time. It's not something to speed through. It's like, so when you do get ready to take your quiz, your actual quiz, which, by the way, I'll give you an idea. Let me show you. I'm going to go to the Get Started to let you see what I'm talking about. And the Get Started tab takes you through to your course schedule. And it actually tells you, and I already know, week 2, I believe it's one. No, that's for practice quiz. Week 3, I think it's 3 and 5, 3 and 6. Okay, there's one in week 3. And there's another one, I think in week 5. Or is it week 6? I think it's week 6. I know it's week 6 because that's the last one. Yeah. So basically, those are midterms, kind of. That's when you have them. But somebody say, well, wait a minute. Why do I have to study each one of the weeks? Each one of the weeks you do it because guess what? When you take the week 3 quiz, do you think the week 3 quiz is going to be the material in week 3, or is it incorporate the quiz information from weeks 2 and 1? There we go. There we go. Make sense? So you're preparing yourself for everything. And I'm laying you out something here. And that's why I like to do this open house. Because once I start the course, next week, I started it today. But I'm saying that I won't do this. And this is like a student told me one time, said, man. And I said, look, if you ever, and you're going to have it. I'm going to have it archived, and you will be able to refer back to it. Okay? So I am going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to spend the next hopefully 10 minutes or so, 15 at the most, giving you some information about why I say adversity is the springboard to success. It all started when I was 7. That was a long time ago. That was in 1957. My dad was stabbed to death in front of me in my house. A guy who was living with us, renting a room, it turns out he was having an affair with my mom, and my dad, and I found this out years and years later, was confronted him, and a fight broke out. And the fight ended up in the bedroom where I was sleeping, along with, and I wasn't asleep, along with 5 younger sisters. The man took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the forehead. My dad died. The man ran out of the house, but returned a couple of days later, and a puzzled 7-year-old was left with a man sleeping in the bed openly with his mother that he had seen kill his dad. So that created issues. Well, it gets even worse after that because that very same man then proceeded to beat my mom on a regular basis. Thus, I grew up in a house of domestic violence. The police were there frequently. He would go to jail. She'd go back and get him, bring him back home. And that kept on. In 62, we moved from that area, the west side of Chicago, to Gary, Indiana, in a single home, which we had lived in the building that we lived in before that my parents owned. So anyway, they rented it out, and then we moved to this house in Gary in 62. I was 12. And so the beating stopped because an aunt of mine came from Michigan and stayed with us up until around March of 63, March or April of 63. And so my mom, in between that period, had 2 more children. They were both girls. So thus I had 7 younger sisters and just me as a boy. So anyway, Memorial Day of 1963, my mom had a restaurant, and she went to the restaurant downtown in Gary. She said, Richard, you're in charge, as I was accustomed to it anyway, being the oldest, and I was left in charge of the house. So I woke up early the next morning before day, and there was smoke in the house. That's what woke me up. And I opened up the windows and doors, and then I saw the car pull away that my mother and the guy drove. And I walked in her room, and I saw that she hadn't slept in her bed. Well, that wasn't unusual. So anyway, we went on about the business of that day. And then sometime later that day, 2 gentlemen came to the door. They introduced themselves as Gary police officers, detectives, and said that they wanted to talk to us. So I reluctantly let them come in the house because the old rule was then don't let anybody in the house. But it's the police. What am I going to do? So I let them in, and then they said, "Are you the oldest?" And I said, "Yes." They says, "We have bad news. Your mom has been found dead in Chicago." I lost it. I totally started screaming and hollering the guy's name, and they said, "Oh, okay, that must be the suspect that turned himself in Chicago." And so anyway, um, we were brought from Gary, all 8 of us, to live with an aunt in the south side of Chicago. My mother's sister, who didn't want us there, she was only keeping us there long enough to determine how she was going to split us up, send us to different homes or whatever. It was horrible. And she treated us like that. So it was pretty bad for that year. Then another aunt, the same one that I told you earlier that came from Michigan and returned back, came and said, "No, kids are not going to be split. I'm taking all 8," and moved us and had a house built in the further south side of Chicago in the Morgan Park area called Maple Park specifically. And so anyway, we moved into that house, and her husband were there living. I immediately had problems with her husband because he wanted me to take his name, and I did not want to take his name because I was the oldest, and I wanted to continue to carry my dad's name on. Well, at any rate, we had other problems. I just didn't get along with him. Well, I would find out some years later, one of the reasons why we had problems is because he was hurting my sisters in a way that they shouldn't have been. You can use your imagination. You already know what I'm talking about without me getting very specific. So there were problems there. Even between my aunt and uncle, they got into it all the time. Guns were pulled. It was bad. It was bad. It was bad. So anyway, I would discover when I was 14 years old. That was about the time we moved in to the house. That this guy, June of 2014, that this guy was going to receive 10 years because he pled guilty. And I was, well, 10, okay. I was told, though, that 10 meant 5 because you'd had day for a day at that time, good time off. So whenever you heard a sentence, you automatically cut it in half for what they were really going to serve. Then I was hit with more bad news, that for good behavior, that he would have a year and a half knocked off. Well, that's what he ended up doing. He ended up serving 3.5 years. And so I was very troubled about that. I was so troubled that, I couldn't connect with my aunt and uncle. So I heard this lady on the radio, and I went and found her. I was 14 years old at this time in '64, and because I had turned 14 May of '64, and we moved in the house in June of '64, I went and found this lady. But I was 14. Now remember, 14-year-olds at that time were little. Now 14-year-olds are like 6 feet tall and size 12 shoes and all that stuff. But anyway, I was a little kid, and I told this lady I needed a mother. She said, "I'll be your friend." And so she became my friend. And then, she said that, well, I can only help you that much. So anyway, she stayed in my life and continued to be my friend. In the meantime, I would question people, including her, about what is this thing with this situation. This guy is only going to jail for 3.5 years. What's that all? What's that all about? What does that mean? So anyway, I felt really compelled and kept pursuing the question. So she ended up telling me a little bit, but then somebody finally said to me, "Richard, that's just the way the law operates." And I didn't understand what that meant. But she said, or whoever it was that told me, they said it was attorneys or lawyers. So I said, okay. So I went to the library at my school. I was in 8th grade, and asked the librarian, did we have any books on lawyers? And she said, yes, we have a little book. And I said, may I check it out? And she said, yes. So I checked the book out, and that night I took that book and read it cover to cover. And the next day, guys, anybody I met, I introduced myself as Richard Wright and said, I'm going to be a lawyer. Family members, including the aunt that didn't want us all together, started challenging me, saying, you're reaching too high of a goal. I didn't accept that. I didn't even tell them that I'm going to show them. I don't believe in that. I believe in this. Actions speak louder than words. And so I didn't respond to that. Or either, as there's a slang term that says, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. And what that meant is that I didn't buy into what they were telling me about myself. I already knew what I was going to do. So I proceeded with my life, living, graduated from high school. The lady continued to be in my life as a friend. By the way, just on a footnote, further down the road, she did legally adopt me, and I am legally her son at this time. But that was after I had gone through law school and completed law school, and there were some other issues in between that I won't talk about that caused that to happen. But anyway, my point being is this, is that I ended up graduating from high school. I told my aunt I wasn't going to stay with them anymore, and I went and stayed with some friends that I had met at the church. And their mother let me come and stay, and I registered in school at night, a junior college, and it's called Loop College, which is Harold Washington now, City College of Chicago, and I started taking classes at night. That same family, they helped me to get a job with a big law firm downtown. It was a big Jewish law firm, and they ended up allowing me, so I ended up becoming a member of their mailroom and a messenger. Now, when I used to go to work, there a lot of the guys wore these polo shirts like I got on now. But I didn't. I wore a white shirt and tie. That was just the way I was doing. And they used to tease me. But I ended up one day taking a package to one of the clients, a guy by the name of Ray Kroc, whose name may or may not mean anything to you. But he is and was the founder of McDonald's. And so he took to me, and we got to know each other. I was a messenger that he took to be his personal messenger. And I met with him many places, had meals with him, and went to meetings with him, just sitting, listening, and learning. So I was a messenger. In the meantime, I got married, and then came not one kid, but 2 kids. Well, the law firm, they saw me elevating. They saw me doing well. I was on the dean's list and honor roll. They would, I would give them my grade information. They would put it in the bulletin, pass it around the whole law firm, and on a daily bulletin, whenever it came out, people would see that and they would congratulate me. In other words, they could see that I was keeping forward movement and I was focused on my goal. Well, at any rate, I didn't have a car. I studied on the elevated or subway. I studied on 2 buses. I had to be at work at 8:30 in the morning, and I had classes starting at 4:30. I got off at 4, and I had books, not digital. They weren't invented then, so I had the regular books. And if you're studying anything like what I was studying, books were pretty big. So, any rate, I ended up doing that, and I would get home at night real late, grab a bite to eat, and then study, go to bed, get up early in the morning, take an hour and a half to get back downtown. And I did that, and then on Saturdays, I didn't work, but I went to school on Saturdays the same way. And so the law firm saw that, I was really serious. So they came to me with an opportunity to move up out of the mailroom and work in the file department, which I accepted, with increase, with the responsibility of the kids and all of that. So I ended up going on and becoming a file clerk. Well, Mr. Croc contacted me to congratulate me, and my boss in the file department thought it was a joke that someone called me using his name. And I said, no, that's really him. I know him. And she was shocked. Anyway, I wasn't the kind of person going around like I knew Ray Kroc and all of that. The lawyers that knew, they knew. All the lawyers didn't know it. But anyway, the point of the matter is this, guys. I'm getting a point to you, is that I didn't let things stop me from moving forward. So anyway, I continued to do what I was doing, and reached the point where I had finished the junior college, and sometimes I had 4 courses, sometimes I had as many as few as 1. But I stayed in school. I would not take a quarter or semester off as we were then, because I needed the continuity. So anyway, I ended up getting an offer from the law firm because something happened to the law librarian. So they asked me if I would be their law librarian. And I didn't know anything about it, but I wasn't one to say, well, let me see. No, I said yes, because I know I could learn how to do anything. So I sat in the library, was told, how to file away the books, of course, easily on the shelf. But I also had to learn how to keep the services that had pages that changed every week and switch the right pages out. So I did that. So I was a custodian of the books. But while I was sitting there, I looked at other things. I looked at how the lawyers were researching. I learned the systems that they were doing. I started reading up on writing memos and briefs and things like that. So one day, I was sitting there listening to the lawyers, as I had many times. And this particular occasion, I ended up listening to them talk about point of laws or a case that they were working on, and they were trying to find some research for it. And they said, well, they were going to get that done after lunch. Well, I stayed and ate my lunch at my desk, and then I knew with the systems that I learned, I went and pulled those cases. It was 10 books, 10 cases. I pulled them, tore a legal pad as a bookmark, and left them stacked, and then with a big pad on it says, do not disturb. So anyway, after that, the lawyers came in that were working, and they came and they said to me, I got this list of cases. I can't find any one of them. They're all empty. Where do you know where they might be? So I said, yeah, they're over there in that corner. And they said, and they started looking at it. They said, oh, my God, these are exactly what we were looking for. These are on-point cases. Who did that? I said, I did. How did you do that? I said, I listened. I know how to research and write. So the lawyer said, come with me. Took me to the boss, and the boss said to him, what's going on? He says, we're wasting our money on him. He says, what do you mean? He says, this kid knows how to research, he knows how to write, and he actually pulled the cases on point that I was going to pull for research, and they're already pulled and stacked. So he smiled and says, well, what do you think we should do? They said, we need to put him in another position. Let's have him an assistant. So I became, at that time, what they called a legal assistant or a law clerk. Today it's called a paralegal. And they started taking me to court. They started taking me to real estate closings. They started taking me to contract negotiations. I would sit up and I would take notes and I would write things up for them. I actually wrote things that ended up in the case books that the judges themselves, that were in the cases themselves as language that was very persuasive, but it was my language. But because I wasn't a lawyer, I, didn't get credit. But I knew. So anyway, my point being is this, is that I continued to move forward. In the meantime, it was time for me to, oh, and by the way, I did get increases each of those times in salaries, not just titles. So anyway, the situation was such that it was time for me to, I left junior college, and then went to my for my next year and a half to 2 years to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University in downtown Chicago. Declared a political science major, minoring in business. So I ended up continuing that at night and on Saturdays, and so I ended up doing well there, uh, staying on the honor roll, dean's list. Then it came time for me to apply for law school. I had taken the LSAT, the admissions test. I didn't do very well on it, but I was contemplating what to do, but I still had my mind set on Northwest University School of Law. Well, I had been told and advised that it's a general practice to apply to 3 schools at a minimum, so then just in case. I said, I'm not doing that. I am not doing it. I wasn't cocky or arrogant, but I said, I think I can do this thing. I think I can be one that they admit. So they said, do you know that Northwestern University has 10,000 students applying for each year in the incoming class, and they only take 250? I said, that doesn't mean anything to me. I got a seat in that 250. So anyway, I ended up preparing my application. The application was about 6 pages long, resume attached, but then I included other things, like some of my writing samples, my story about what I went through, how I was raising kids, what I was doing in school, and all of that, and how I was climbing my ranks. My folder, my package was this thick, and it was in a big box. And I asked one of the lawyers, could you deliver this over there for me, please, to the admissions office? And they did. He did. And I ended up getting a call requesting an interview. They said, we don't do this, but we want to see who's behind this. So I ended up going to the law school, escorted into a room, about 3 or 4 people in there who were the administration of Northwestern University School of Law. And they started asking me questions, and I started answering them. And then they said, did you prepare all of this yourself? I said, yes. And I said that I am going to be a lawyer, and I like this school. And so they said, well, we've heard some things about you too as well, because the lawyer that delivered the package, he told them he taught there about me as well. I didn't know this until they revealed it to me. And they said, well, here's the deal. We don't accept students like this, but what we will do is tell you this. We like everything that we see, and that we can't tell you that we're giving you an offer, but what we will say is you will be receiving a letter of communication from us in the next week or 2, and I think you'll like what you read. Well, you know what that meant, and I was excited about it. And, but anyway, I ended up getting one of those seats, and I was admitted into the class of 75. 1978 class, rather, because that's when I graduated. So anyway, and you saw the picture in my student lounge. But the point I'm making to you is that then I got into law school. So when I got into law school, my wife I was married to at that time, she had graduated in 75 with a degree in education, and I had my political science degree, minoring in accounting and business, rather. And so anyway, started at the orientation. At the orientation of the law school, they told us to look at the person in front of us, the person behind us, person left and right. They said in a few weeks, some of those people will be gone. And they were right, because it was a grueling program, and people were leaving. And so I stayed. But then finally something happened. The first time in the history of Chicago public schools, they went on strike. And when they went on strike, it reached a stage where I lost the last bit of income we had. I'd stayed in school. I couldn't pay the electric bill, so we had lights go out. I studied by candlelight and with flashlights. But I was still determined. We ate food out of cans and stuff. We had the 2 kids, 2 girls that are now 47 and 46. We sent them to their grandmother's house not too far away, but we continued to go through, and I continued to go to class. But it was getting to me. And so the pressure so much that I told one of my professors, that Dr. Hughes, I said, I'm going to possibly have to take a leave of absence because I says I can't focus anymore, all the situations, circumstances I'm under. She says, before you do that, will you come to my office? So I did. And when I got to her office, she said, park it over there and have a seat. And she stood in front of the door and she said, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'll let you out of this room when you tell me that you're going to ride it out. She says, other people have run into problems, and you're not going to quit. And I'm going to do everything I can to help you. So I said to her, and we were there a while, and I was talking to her. I was giving her every reason why I shouldn't, and she was hitting me right back with every reason why I should. So I agreed to stay. And then 3 years later, I thanked her for allowing me to see that day that you saw in that picture. I get kind of emotional when I start talking about this part. And so I made it through. While I was at the law school, I had an instructor who was a practicing criminal defense attorney. He told me, he says, you know, I need you, why don't you come over for dinner, you and some of the other attorneys, not attorneys, law students, and we did. And then when they left, I sat down and opened up to him about what I had been through. He says, well, I'm gonna help you, take you over to the criminal courts building in the basement, pull them old records so you can get closure, so you can know exactly what happened. And then he made a suggestion to me. He says, now, I recommend to you that you become a criminal defense lawyer. Now, that meant that I would be defending persons who were charged with crimes, including murderers. And I didn't hesitate. I'm one of these kind of people that if a person has demonstrated to me their ability to succeed, that's the kind of person I want to take advice from. So I listened to him very carefully, and I ended up deciding to leave the law firm. So now I had got ready to go back to the law firm after I graduated. I took a job, took 2 years there, and decided I was just going to leave. I was making really good money, but I was not happy because I wanted to do criminal law. So I started a criminal practice. The first year, I made $5 grand. That wasn't any money, but I still struggled with it. Well, the lawyer became a judge, and he gave me some great advice. He says, go to California. The National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers is having a seminar in San Diego. So I said, okay, I'll go. And I went on a plane with a bunch of public defenders and other lawyers, and we got there. I was placed in a group with a guy who was over my section, who was a California attorney. His name was John Cochran. Yes, John Cochran is Johnny Cochran. Who is Johnny Cochran to some of you? He was the lead attorney for O.J. Simpson, who coined the phrase, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. So I got some training under him. My eyes are getting watery. But anyway, the truth of the matter is that I took that advice, and I ended up doing well. My criminal law practice took off. I started doing radio, started doing a show called Know Your Rights. Rights was spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. And I had a phone number, 974-4487, which spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. So I was doing well. So I ended up going back. Let me back up. 91 to 93, I went to seminary to study for a Master of Arts in Religion. And I finished all the requirements except one paper, but I was content with what I learned. And so anyway, the point of the matter is I went to seminary, and I still put it as pending. They keep sending me letters saying if I send that paper in, that they'll, finalize my degree. So it's no big deal to me. So anyway, ministry was very important to me. So I continued practicing, and then I ended up going through. I should back up. I went through a divorce right around the time when I started my law practice, and it because I guess I wasn't making enough money, so we ended up going separate directions. By this time, we had a third child who was born same year I graduated from law school. She's 40, and so anyway, then I got married again, and the person I was married to didn't work well because she had other ideas, and we have one daughter. Well, anyway, I would then, after that, 94, meet a young lady that became friends, and now she has been my wife um, 24 years as of July 28th. And we have 4 kids. Those are the kids that you see in that picture in the student lounge. So at any rate, I found myself, moving forward. I decided in 2000 to retire from being a lawyer at only 50 years old, and I ran a janitorial company, and then I also ended up finding myself teaching special education with at-risk kids. Um, really, really, really tough. I do tell you, I found out from a few years ago through Facebook that one of my students that I had who heard me and I didn't know, she was a juvenile delinquent, but she ended up now working as a juvenile probation officer. So she went on to college and got her degree in criminal justice. Ooh, my eyes are getting so watery. But at any rate, I ended up continuing with that. Then I finally left in 2003 the school to go back to prove to kids that you needed more than a bachelor's, that you needed and let me read this, ooh, that you needed at least a master's to continue moving forward. And so I ended up finding myself getting accepted at University of Illinois in Chicago in the MBA program, and did that for about almost 2 years before I was in a car accident, and then I ended up leaving. But I did well while I was there. Well, at any rate, I continued doing closings for title companies. I continued operating in ministry and supporting my family. And so then finally, in 2011, someone came to me saying that there was this school, Rasmussen College, which I had never heard of, looking for an adjunct professor to teach business law. So I could do that. So I ended up applying for the position, and I got it and started working at Rasmussen October 2011, and as an adjunct in business law. And it was residential and not online at that time. And it's funny because one of the classes I'm teaching this quarter, T2, is business law. So it's kind of like I'm still teaching it in some sections, even though I'm criminal justice. So anyway, I ended up taking the job, but I let the dean know quickly that I was a criminal justice person. I started working at the college, moved closer to the college, and then ended up staying there a lot. They thought I was full-time, but I wasn't. And then I ended up finding out about a job as state program coordinator at the School of Justice Studies, and I applied for that job. And I got it, and then they had me teaching full-time. And since that time, state program coordinator position has changed. So now I teach 5 classes, and I do that every quarter. And now I'm not residentially. I've been online for several years, which means I had to learn how to teach online. And that's kind of hard for a person who never had computer training and all of that. But I taught myself how to do all of this. And so I ended up succeeding. I ended up deciding to work at the college. I like what they stand for. I like being able to help students. I like to continue to work with students. I'm more of a mentor not just a teacher. I'm not an instructor. I'm more of a leader in terms of my students. And I'm not easy, but I am focused. And I let my students know I care about you because I operate empathetically with every student in every situation. Sometimes I have to get hard with students, but that's for the students' good. I know about that because I already told you about that. So the point of the matter is that that brings me to where I'm at now. And so I appreciate every student, and I command and demand um, excellence. First of all, in criminal justice, we need more excellence. This area is under attack, especially in law enforcement, in corrections, and other areas, but especially in those areas. And we need nothing but ethical, educated professionals who can do the job. And that's my role. And so I take the time to let you know where I came from and why my motto is adversity is the springboard to success. And so I'm going to terminate this session, but I have to give you a key word. And the key word and phrase for this week is criminal law. You provide that to me in the way that you provide it, and you'll get your 5 points. You got to provide it, though, before midnight of this Sunday. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Thanks for hanging in there. This was longer. It won't be this long in weeks to come because the story took about a half an hour to make sure that you got it. But I think that you'll understand why I am with you. And so I'm going to wish you good night. I will be sending out an archive of this so that you will have it for any time you need it. It'll be emailed to you, and then it'll be also posted under recordings on the course homepage. So good night.